Live from Las Vegas, broadcasting around the world. You're listening to Up is Higher Than Down with L.A. Walker. L.A. Walker. Raw and unfiltered conversations on how to give life's challenges the finger. Truth is your passport to emotional freedom. Give an eviction notice to negativity. Dump yesterday's garbage. Learn how to be positive, energized, healthy, and alive during these insanely unpredictable times. Look up, get up, stay up. Then help somebody else to get up. Remember, any part of up is higher than down. Now, broadcasting hope to the world, L.A. Walker.
Hey, I'm back. Once again, I've been given the opportunity to experience this marvelous thing called life. And it is my job now to live it. And you know what I'm going to say. Yes, living is the best job I've ever had, so I am on my job. And I hope that you are on yours too. How is everybody? Feeling a little bit better? Feeling a little more hopeful now that we have the opportunity to receive vaccines? I think most people are. Most people are more conversational with each other than they have been in months. The ease is starting to appear. I just hope we don't get crazy and forget about the potential variants out there, begin taking off our masks, eliminate social distancing, and bam! Because I don't think America is ready for a third lockdown. Do you? So if you agree, be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. Keep your mask on and practice social distancing, please. We're beginning to feel lighter and better because we are hopeful. Let me share these words of hope given to us from some great and wonderful people. You'll know most of them, I'm sure. It's always something to know you've done the most you could, but don't leave off hoping, or it's of no use doing anything. Hope, hope to the last. Charles Dickens. But I know somehow that only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. National Youth Poet Laureate Amanda Gorman. And from our President, Joe Biden, fear never builds the future, but hope does. Here's an Italian proverb that I love. Hope is the last thing ever lost. Those quotes are all so inspiring. But I think the greatest hope that inspires the greatest hope from within us is actually seeing, feeling, touching, being in the midst of what hope has built. I got an opportunity to visit a friend's puppet shop here in Las Vegas at the Boulevard Mall, to watch someone take their dreams and let them be made manifest through the spirit of hope that inspired work, belief, and achievement was outstanding for me. It was absolutely inspiring to see a friend take their dream, wrestle with it, survive COVID. Through that spirit of hope, they were able to persevere and create something wonderful. Not just something for themselves, but something beautiful and wonderful that can be shared with the world, to have hope and inspiration. All of that great energy gets passed on to others. Wow. Maybe you don't live in the city of Las Vegas. Maybe you're not close to the Boulevard Mall, but you can go to lvpuppets.com and you can order a puppet from the puppet store. You can even commission a puppet to be built. Right, build the puppet that you want. That's lvpuppets.com. That brings me to another friend. You know, I am so delighted that I have friends that are filled with hope and inspiration and action. I have another friend who put hope into action also in the midst of COVID. This friend became deliberately defiant and determined to answer the call to service because he knew that he had the talents that could be shared with others so desperately in need of them at this time. He answered the call to service. He said no to the call from fear. Not, I'm hanging up on you. I'm moving forward with a vision. And that is my friend, Brian Martin. Now, I'm going to tell you something I never told Brian. When I first heard of Brian, and I read all of these things about Brian, I was like, that's got to be fake. Nobody can be all of that. Well, I got to tell you the truth. He really is all of that. Brian Martin is not only all of that, but he's a lot more. He has 25 years experience in leading teams in the telecoms operations. He's held international leadership positions with Sprint, Nextel, and Merck. He sits on the board of governors for the Human Rights Campaign, known as HRC, and he's also on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Advisory Council for the Discovery Children's Museum. And presently, he has begun Max Star Urban Arts Foundation with a well-known partner from En Vogue, you know the name, Maxine Jones. So personally, how have you been doing this past year?
This past year has been, I think in the grand scheme of things, I have to admit that I'm pretty blessed. COVID and the social justice issues have kind of lived in the forefront of my existence, obviously. And my intersections have all collided, meaning my professional work with, diversity, equity, and inclusion and corporate leadership, my advocacy and activism work, and then my creative side. So everything collided in such a way that it forced me to kind of take stock of everything. But in doing so, I just realized how tremendously blessed I am to be able to still function in those spaces in light of everything that's happening around me.
Listen, we come from, and I'm older school than you, but we come from old school. In old school, It was tougher. I mean, we've been through some things.
Man, it's so funny, Ella, and you're absolutely right. And taking stock of where I'm at, even professionally, my career started at such an early age. I was blessed that somebody saw value in me, and I was thrust into these environments that I wasn't professionally ready to handle, but I certainly wasn't mature enough to fully handle. And I was always the only Black person in the room or at the table. That exposure was tremendous, but to your point, you just don't even realize the things that you're enduring and the things that you have to push through. So when I look back now that I am the older person in the room typically, and I've got people that I mentor, I'm able to very candidly say, you guys have it so much easier. And then I look at my parents and I realize I had it so much easier than they did.
Absolutely. I'm writing my book, and so I'm at the part where I'm sharing about my granddad. And he made a practice of every time I spent any hours with him of telling me over and over again that he opened a barbecue house in 1928 in Chicago, first Black man to do that. 1929, the Depression came. 1930, my mother was born. He just recited that because that halted his life. That changed the whole direction of his life.
Trajectory, yeah.
Yes. So I was saying, I wish he was alive so I could tell him, Granddaddy, I've been through the stock market crash. I've been through the housing market crash. I've been through the pandemic. Listen, I got stuff to tell you right now. So
you've earned your stripes. Right?
right. So
love it.
Yeah.
And you're still here thriving and being amazing and beautiful. I mean, and that to me, that's a testament of the journey.
Thank you so much. It's just a blessing to be alive. It just really, really, really is. And it takes a lot of effort, but it's worth every minute. And I constantly say that living is the best job I've ever had. So, Brian, I try to stay on my job.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. And, I need it. And I think back to the very first time, you probably don't remember, but, I knew of you before we met. And I remember meeting you, and I remember us hanging out and briefly getting acquainted and just being so taken with all of this creativity that was just oozing from you. And I got it because I was relegated to my corporate life and had to suppress all of that was within me. And I just was so inspired Because, you know, as you know, once it starts to flow, you can't control it. And it
No.
might be crazy and insanity to everybody around you, but it's just organically what's coming out of you. And that's what I saw when I met you.
Well, thank you. And the same. And I'm honored that you felt that way because I had an immediate connection to you and to your spirit. You know, you're so generous.
Oh.
People take receiving advice and direction so casually. But when someone who actually knows what they're talking about pauses to share information with you, that's an invaluable experience. And so your generosity is overwhelming, and I really appreciate it. And yeah. And that brings me to the side of you that wants to give back to the community. I mean, because let's face it, having a nonprofit or a foundation of any kind is a lot more work than just going and working a corporate job. Seriously.
Oh my God, LA. I cannot underscore that statement enough. It's absolutely true.
So with that knowledge, and this is not your first rodeo, how did you arrive at MaxStar?
Well, it's funny because you're right. I've been around a long time doing other things, but this is my first foray into the nonprofit space.
Oh.
So, you know, I came into it with a lot of knowledge. I had done some consulting and provided some strategic support for other nonprofits. But to your point about being engaged in the day-to-day, being responsible for the day-to-day decisions, being responsible for the day-to-day bills, you know, those are things that I have done in my personal life, but I really didn't factor in what that looked like. And those are very unfamiliar spaces to me. So what got us here is, I'm sure you know, my business partner, Maxine Jones, one of the founding members of En Vogue, you know, we had residencies lined up and just all these tremendous plans for 2020. You know, my show, The Bright Star Soul Sessions, had launched, and then COVID hit. Some of our plans went awry, and we immediately knew we had to pivot. And one of the things that I knew just from knowing Max as long as I have is that she's got a passion for children and working with children. And she gets crazy when it comes to children not having the resources and the support that they need. And then as I started to look at my life, I don't have children. And I was like, okay, Brian, what is your legacy going to be? Right. And throughout my life, I've always, and some of my childhood friends reminded me of it, just always inadvertently ended up being that person, like standing up on behalf of somebody or something, you know, just always the first one, you know, ready to fight. And you know, that's a blessing and a curse. So when I got that call to action and realized that there was obviously a need for children in marginalized communities to have support, Max and I partnered, and, you know, all of our stuff, we play with the MaxStar moniker quite a bit. We were like, let's do this foundation, and let's do it in such a way that it's different, that it leverages both of our brands. I can't say celebrity in my case, but I certainly can in hers. But one of the things we knew is that I had a presence in certain spaces. She had a global presence. And we would both, by coming together, be able to reach so many more people just by virtue of economies of scale. And that's where it started, strictly in concept. And she, like me, once we get an idea, anybody tell you, well, you've seen me, my mind starts clicking. And things and the process and the formation of the organization just kind of came. And I asked, I said, are we doing this at the right time, given all we're faced with COVID? But the answer came to me, I think, spiritually, and it's like there's never a right time for activism and for giving. So here we are.
All right. So were you guys able to maintain your physical space?
Yeah, well, actually, yes. We actually didn't secure our space until the end of November, and we just moved in. We started moving in officially in December. So we're still very new, and we're still setting it up. So I cannot wait to get you by to see it. We've got almost 3,000 square feet, and I call it a content lab. Okay. We've got stage space for podcasts and interviews and stage performances, a performance stage for live vocal and theater performance, a photo lab for professional photo shoots, and a recording booth and recording studio. So not only will we be able to make our living for our for-profit businesses, we'll also be able to allocate time to educate, bring in youth, and support them in their learning, especially those youth that have a love for the arts. Our focus increased because we originally started out with a focus for supporting children in the arts. But we realized immediately that there was a need for all children to have support,
Yes.
or a safe place to learn and have distance learning or whatever the need is. So that's what we're working really, really hard and fast toward our grand opening and being able to really start to engage and provide services for people.
That sounds extremely exciting. Now, you have an informational show as well. How is that working right now?
I do. So we've got 3 shows in production. The informational show is called Exploring DEI Inroads with Brian Martin, and that's around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that show has just moved beyond concept. I've got my first series of guests lined up, and that really tied back to my experience in corporate America around 6 years ago. I really shifted my focus as a training professional in learning DEI because it was something that had hit me by virtue of 30 years in navigating in the corporate space.
Yes.
And then it just made sense because we are right now as a global society more intersectional than we've ever been.
Yes.
We've got baby boomers and Gen X, and we talk about millennials all the time, but people forget or don't know Gen Z is at the table.
Gen Z is right there.
And we're all trying to figure it out. Then you factor in race and ethnicity and gender assignment and how people identify.
Yes.
And this is the most convoluted that we've ever been as a society. And what we hear all the time is diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. But the reality of it is most people don't really know what that means. The history of it, how we got here, and how the language is evolving. And the main example I bring up is gender pronouns. He, him, his, and non-binary. What is that? So those are the conversations that we're going to unpack and really talk about it. So in the hopes that we can all elevate our education and then our ability and our willingness to engage with each other, and especially people that are different from us.
That is a lot, and it's so necessary. And people are very tender about their gender assignments. Very tender. And
yes.
And those of us, I talked to youth at the center, and I told them,
yes.
I says, listen, I am from Jurassic Park. And so you're going to have to slow walk me through the they and the them. And I said that, and it broke the ice, and they were so nice to just take the time and share all of these identities with me. And Brian, really, honestly, I don't even know how these young people even know all of those things, but they know them down to a science. The only thing and the connection missing is that they expect us to know, and we need information because we just don't have it. We don't have it.
You're absolutely right, LA. And the pendulum swings both ways. I've had similar experiences. And what I found with the youth and even people that identify across the LGBTQ spectrum, people just want a space made where they can be heard.
Yes.
And to your point about, them having it down pat and very often having the expectations that we are as versed as they are, when I say the pendulum swings both ways, we hold them accountable or hold them to the standard of, well, you should know these things. And by virtue of their short time on earth, we can't expect them to know what we know by virtue of experience. So I think the core of the message is somewhere in the middle, finding that sweet spot.
That sweet spot. Yeah, we have to keep fighting. But at least you're doing something about it and not just talking.
I'm trying.
So that's
I'm
great.
trying. It's tender. And, one of the things I'm realizing is really leaning into my identity and being very transparent about who I am and what my beliefs are has ruffled a lot of feathers. I realized that most of my career in corporate America, I sat in silence because I didn't feel like there was a space for me. As a matter of fact, I still feel like there wasn't and is not most often times a space for me to openly share my thoughts, share my feelings, share my perspective as a Black man, share the things that I've experienced, share the perils of our race. White fragility and white privilege are very real things, and it makes people very uncomfortable to talk about it. And quite often they come from a place of you being aggressive or attacking, but in reality, we're attacked all the time. And I'm just now being transparent, and I have lost some very high profile and very high, very influential and powerful people that now view me through a negative lens. And what I have to say is thank God and thanks to my mother and my family for giving me the support and the confidence to say the hell with it, because I'm really, really at this point in my life okay with it. Really.
Well, you know what? We have reached a do or die situation. There's no more sitting on the pot. Everybody has to get up and everybody has to get busy in an effort to make life palatable. Now, I'm not going to even
Just
say,
palatable.
you're right, just palatable. I'm not even
Yeah,
going to
let's
say
start
better.
there.
Just because things are insane right now. I mean,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate call to action in my mind.
It is.
And either you're for me or against me. And, it's not any of it's coming from a place of judgment or wanting to see the demise of any group or any race or any of that. It is just the acknowledgement and the realization that I'm going to call out what our experiences is, and my experience specifically, without filtering it, without trying to make you comfortable, because your being uncomfortable will give you a glimpse of what our experience or my experience
Yes.
is most of the time. And in sharing that, hopefully we can come to a place where we can find compromise and reconciliation. That's my hope.
Ryan, hold your thought for a moment. I need to drop in a personal note here, and we'll be right back after this. Book. What book? The Art of Seeing Beyond the Mess. Yes, is going to be published and released very soon. And it will be released in a non-traditional magazine format. Because I just can't do normal now, right? I have to have a way of expressing my creative talents and energies and those of my friends. The Art of Seeing Beyond the Mess will be released in 4 volumes, consisting of 4 chapters over a period of 4 months just for you. I'll be posting and announcing details in just a few days. So stick with me for The Art of Seeing Beyond the Mess.
You're listening to Up is Higher Than Down with L.A. Walker.
Brian, are you on the National Board of Governors for HRC?
I am.
Oh my
I'm actually on the
gosh.
National Board of Governors with the Human Rights Campaign, which I'm so proud of because I get to have a say in making sure that the Las Vegas community is fully supported and that we've got representation. So to be a part of that top tier of leadership for our community is such an honor, and it's something that HRC takes seriously. But I've got 3 roles. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Liaison for the Las Vegas community. And, it aligns perfectly with my corporate background. So now we get to engage with, the Latin chamber and the Asian chamber and the African chamber and find all these little pockets of communities, the NAACP, and say, hey, here we are. We want to partner with you to help support and fuel your efforts and your agenda. How do we find a place of compromise where we can come together and do some great work? And
that's
I
powerful.
can talk about for hours.
But that's powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. It's powerful and necessary because I think that most of our society has come to the realization that there are non-traditional roles everywhere. There are gay people, there are trans, there are bisexuals, there's, I don't care whether you're Asian, Latino, or whatever your ethnic background might be, or religious background. So we need everyone.
You absolutely do. And even those, of us who aren't familiar with every walk of life, for instance, I was very trans nervous. I didn't have a lot of trans friends. I didn't fully understand anything about it. And just speaking honestly, I had a traumatic experience as a very young man with a trans person. It was a one-off thing. I was at a club I was too young to be in. And, this person ran up on me and was like, hey, and I was like, oh, Lord. And I kind of carried that, and I kept an arm's length distance because it evoked a feeling of fear of me at like 16 or 17. And thanks to my exposure working with HRC and GLAAD, I can't forget my friends over at GLAAD, I've gotten to know all these amazing trans people and spent time in days and days and days of workshops and sharing and training. And I found all this brilliance and all this suppressed talent and passion that these people can't even show because they're just too busy trying to figure out how to show up and be who they truly are.
Oh, yes.
And what comes with that is the pain and hearing people, I've tried to commit suicide, or so-and-so did, or they turned to drugs, or they turned to sex work, and just all these things that they would probably have they would have never gone down these paths had a space been made for them to show up and be their naturally beautiful self. So I am a case study in how somebody can evolve in this space. And I think that same example carries over to race and any other area of
Yes.
life that somebody's unfamiliar with, you know?
Any area of difference, yes. We get all freaked out about difference. You know, our religious backgrounds make us divide from the trans community. You know, it's what we've been taught.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that. So part of my personal agenda is combating toxic male masculinity. And I was so happy when I saw that President Obama had made that one of the pillars of his platform.
Yes.
Because that puts me square in the line and in opposition of traditional religious beliefs and some church leaders and the hip-hop community at large for the most part. And that's something I take on quite comfortably. And it's weird, you know, my father was in the entertainment industry and I had very young parents. And they were hardworking, you know, and I went to private school in my earlier years, and I was always in performance choir and, you know, traveling around the city singing and performing. And that was my only exposure to church, unless I went with like a relative. And I started practicing Buddhism, I think at 17. So I use the term burdened by, and that's probably not the best term, but I didn't have those pressures of the church or being judgment or, you know, having the Bible, being hit over the head with the Bible. And I think that allowed me the freedom to kind of navigate in those spaces without the pressure that some people feel. And, you know, it even goes back to that whole DL phenomenon. I know so many dudes that because of that, you know, are trapped into bad behavior and unsafe behavior and just living in a life of pain for fear of judgment.
That's sad.
By the church
That's very
or the
sad.
community.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I come from an opposite background than you. I was the person that was raised with that anchor around my ankle. But I found some pliers and I broke free. I took the bracelet off.
And thank God you did, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best thing that in your life. You have to do that though, and my heart goes out to anyone that feels forced to live a life that's not their own. Because gee whiz, it's hard enough to live your own life, but then to try to live a life that someone else is designing for you, that's impossible.
Yeah, and we all have faced that, you know, be it in a job situation, but could you imagine on your day-to-day existence and really as it relates to the person that you love, the person that you're closest to that, you know, is your harbor in the storm, if that's not truly who you're connected to and who you want to be with or who you are meant to be with, look at the disservice you're doing to that person, but look at the disservice that you're doing to yourself. And quite often it's, I believe, unintentional and they're not even aware they're doing it.
Well, you know what, Brian? Years ago, I sold for Cadillac and I got a promotion to a lease renewal manager. So I had my big office and everything, and my office door, well, my whole wall was glass, so if you were passing by, you could see me all day.
Wow.
So when I moved into my space, I took my picture of Terry and placed it of she and I, and put it on the back side of my desk. Guys walked past that I worked with all day for about 2 weeks and just pause and look at me and then look at the picture, and then, you know, how people let you know that they don't have an appreciation for something that you've done. And I loved every minute of it. I would just adore them stopping by and doing that, because I was like, you are so worried about how I'm living, and how I'm living is who I am, and it makes me so happy.
That's really cool. I think that says a lot that you were intentionally creating a space for yourself to bring your entire self to the workplace. Yes. You know, but it's clear from anybody who knows you're a disruptor, you know, and I think there's beauty in that. And I think if more of us feel empowered in our strength and in our presence, more of us can be disruptors. And that's what's going to shift the needle and move the pendulum.
Well, thank you. And I am disruptive with a cause, for a purpose, not just to be a disruptor. I want to see people included. I want to see people feeling whole and happy. I don't want to see people fragmented and angry and suicidal and all these things that people feel when they don't feel included. Like they're part of the family of life, and everyone should feel that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes from a place of realization. I realized that I have always, I'm from Inglewood, California, grew up hanging out in South Central, and my cousins and, other relatives lived all over the city. And I have to acknowledge there's privilege for me. I'm able to show up and exist in spaces that other people that identify as LGBTQ cannot and have not been able to. I still have homeboys, who are gang members who ride for me. I'm able to hang out on Crenshaw without a problem. But the reality is that's not the norm. And I have to acknowledge that as a privilege of my own, but I also feel a sense of responsibility to change that.
And you're doing that. You're doing that with your life as well as with your work. I have to ask you a question, though. How did you actually meet Maxine Jones?
I get that question all the time. So it was funny. Max and I have known each other now about 7 years. Of course, back in college, I was with all my friends, super, super En Vogue fan. And it's funny, I loved all the ladies and still admire their talent, but something about Max always stood out to me. And she's short and spicy and that big, heavy voice and those big, huge notes. I was like, I got that little short one. And I joked with my friend Melanie. She was just we would always just joke about it. So I think in 2014, I was planning an event. I planned the Atlanta Pride. It's a huge event Labor Day weekend. And I had started to have concert programming each year for the over 30 class because, everything was very youth oriented, and we partnered with AARP and we were like, we need programming for the older people because really we're the ones with the disposable income. And so we were planning an event, and I had heard through the grapevine that Max I knew she had left the group, but she was taking shows as a solo artist. So we reached out. She was way in the Bay Area, and we already had Robin S. and Sybil confirmed on the ticket. And I was like, well, let's see if we can get Maxine the headline. She had just put out a single, and her team made it so easy. And from the time she arrived in Atlanta, all through that weekend, she was just so delightful and so easy to work with. And then what I didn't know at the time is that she and Sybil were cousins. And Sybil and I were already cool. So that, made it even more familiar. Well, the weekend was a blast, and she and I kept in touch. We didn't talk a lot. It would, a text here, a call here, but she was always, made it a point to keep in touch. And if I reached out, she was always super responsive. And fast forward to about a year and a half ago, she's like, because I had been telling her, I said, I'm moving to Vegas, lots of opportunities here, let's see where some synergies may exist. And at the time, she and Dawn had decided to reunite, and Dawn also lives here. And she's like, hey, there's some opportunities in Vegas. And so started working with the two of them. And, again, pre-COVID, we were whisked around town by literally every casino in town, Funky Divas residency, let's put the girls here, let's do that, and it was kind of overwhelming. And then COVID happened, and for a litany of other reasons, the thing with Dawn didn't work out, and Max and I just made the decision, let's join forces and do the damn thing. And that is literally what we did. We spent days and days and days in my backyard, listening to music, writing music, rehearsing music, talking strategy, talking plans, and here we are, now we're business partners, and we have the foundation together. We started Star Max Music Recordings, which will be our music distribution company. And she's got her company, Max Jones Media, and my company is the Bright Star Collective. And they all just kind of came together, and it's just really turning into something really special. I'm so excited about it. I'm so happy for the opportunity to work with her.
As you should be. And what a voice she still has. Oh, wow.
Tell me about it. Intimidating it is to sing background and be on stage with her. But she pushes me and makes me. And it's just so fun, and it's liberating, and it made me tackle even my own insecurities about being back out there and, people not realizing that was a side of me, much like people didn't know that my advocacy work was a side of me. My identities were so separate, LA. This was an opportunity to kind of bring them all together. And I can't tell you the freedom that's brought me.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Such a release for you too. I saw those videos. I saw you back there moving, baby. You had it going on. I was like, go bro.
Trying to keep up, man. But it's fun.
I want to ask you two things. First, The first thing is, how can we, as John Q. Public, help Max Star Urban Arts Foundation?
Oh gosh, there's so many ways. Visit our website. We've got our merch store. We've got more merch coming. Maxine designed all of our T-shirts and all of our masks. We've got our donation links if anybody's so inclined to help support financially. We have not officially activated on our fundraising and putting ourselves out there because we want to get the infrastructure built and everything to a certain level. But we will soon be activating and really going and competing to get funds so that we can fund these amazing programs. So, anything anybody's able to contribute would help. And also, please go to our YouTube channel on the Max Star Urban Arts Foundation on YouTube and subscribe and share, because that is where our content is going. And I think that is the biggest way right now, just to kind of keep us on people's radar. And then, as I mentioned, we have 3 shows coming up through our for-profit companies that will support the foundation, because one of the commitments we both made is everything that we do for profit, all proceeds or a portion of the proceeds will definitely go toward funding the foundation, because it is the core of everything that we do. So the Bright Star Soul Sessions is what I call our new Soul Train, and that's Max and I, not only performing, but bringing in artists like we did with Tony Terry and other friends and R&B artists performing on our soundstage and talking about what's going on with them, social justice issues, and where those artists stand. We also make sure that everybody that we work with has a commitment to full inclusion and equality. So that's another pillar that we're proud of. And of course, I mentioned the DEI inroads. And another show that I will share for the first time publicly on your podcast, my friend, that is called The Brilliant Brown Beauties. Ooh. And what the Brilliant Brown Beauties are, I call them the 4 little funky divas. They're 4 amazingly talented 8-year-old little girls that I cannot tell you enough about. Jordan, Morgan, Quinn, and Taylor. And their moms are also Brilliant Brown Beauties, and their grandmothers are also Brilliant Brown Beauties. And what these little girls are doing is we're creating a series of content, and they'll be performing kids' news, educational programs, reviewing different products, making goo, all things that little girls do. I realized by working with one of the moms, Alicia Taylor, who's a good friend of mine here, that there's no content on YouTube or on any of the shows for our children. There's nothing there. So we decided to create our own content, and we're going to have the Black Girls Rock moment where we're going to honor the Amanda Gormans and really tap into all of this amazing talent that exists within our community. Yes. And it's girl focused for now, but we'll do the Brilliant Brown brothers or boys next. But I'm really, of all the shows, I think this is the one that's going to have everybody that we even let know that we're doing it.
It's so exciting.
Just gets excited.
Yeah, and it's very exciting. Yeah, I'm smiling. So you can't see me, but I'm smiling.
Time this weekend.
That's awesome. You know what? Yeah. I'm going to post the links to your website and your YouTube site. If there are any other sites, just get the information to me. The other thing is, you were mentioning your Soul Train. Do you know Tamichi Briggs? Tamichi.
Is she one of the former dancers?
She was the former designer of the clothing as well as dancer, and she still designs. In fact, I had her as a guest a couple of months ago.
Really?
She's the one that put out all of those fabulous Soul Train outfits. Yes.
Wow. So, I do not know her, but the name is very, very familiar. So I don't know if I saw it in print somewhere.
Yeah.
But it definitely is familiar. I would love, and using Soul Train is probably a very poor comparison in that we don't have the full production support and infrastructure that they have. But when I think about bringing live music with commentary and conversation, sure, that's really the closest comparison that I could come up with. And as we know, Soul Train was the foundation of most of our Saturday mornings growing up.
Don Cornelius, so, yes.
It's our hope that the Soul Sessions can kind of fill that void.
Right. And I will make sure that I link you with Tamichi. So if you consider her as you go along, I think that might be helpful to you.
Absolutely.
Yes. And the other thing is this. Would you please share some parting words to our listening audience for some of the people that are just trying to hold on right now, Brian?
That's a bit of an in vogue pun. Hold on. And it's really just that, LA. It's really the encouragement to do just that, to seek support for, where you are lacking. If it's an ear, if it's conversation, surround yourself with like-minded spirits that really are aligned with your vision and your purpose, and realize that the work is never easy And one of the things I can tell you is that it gets toughest right before the breakthrough. You know, so you've got to hold on, keep pushing, and realize that there are people like L.A. Walker out here that care about your success and that are committed to your success, and look and seek those sources and lean into those people and develop relationships there.
My brother, I thank you so very much, and I wish you the greatest of success in everything that you do, good health and prosperity, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much, LA. I adore you. I appreciate this opportunity. Hello to your guests, and I want to wish everybody, safety. We're almost on the back end of this pandemic, and I cannot wait to see you in person and give you a big hug.
All right, honey. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Listen to Up is Higher Than Down with L.A. Walker every day. To follow up, make comments, discuss today's podcast, or find out how you can become a guest and share your victory over a negative life event, follow L.A. Walker. Up is Higher Than Down on Facebook. Look up, get up, stay up. Remember, any part of up is higher than down.